In the halls of the Sanhedrin, surrounded by the religious elite of Jerusalem, a carpenter from Nazareth stood bound and accused. The atmosphere was thick with the tension of a trial that had reached a stalemate until the High Priest Caiaphas leveled the ultimate question: Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? The answer Jesus provided was not a plea for mercy, nor was it a simple yes. Instead, he unleashed a torrent of Old Testament imagery that functioned like a theological hand grenade. I am, and ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. To a modern reader, this might sound like a poetic description of a future return. To the Sanhedrin, it was a declaration of war against their monopoly on the divine. Why did Caiaphas react with such a violent grief, tearing his priestly robe in a gesture of ultimate outrage? To grasp the weight of the Cloud Rider title, we have to look back long before the New Testament was written. As the late Dr. Michael Heiser meticulously documented in his research on the Divine Council, the title Rider on the Clouds was a specific, recognizable epithet in the ancient world. In the Ugaritic texts of the Canaanites, the neighbors and rivals of ancient Israel, the storm god Baal was known as Rider of the Clouds. He was the deity who controlled rain, thunder, and the life-giving fertility of the land. When the Hebrew psalmists and prophets began writing their scriptures, they engaged in what scholars call polemical subversion. They took the most prestigious title of the pagan god Baal and reassigned them to Yahweh. In Psalm 104, for example, we read that Yahweh maketh the clouds of his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. By doing this, the biblical writers were asserting that Baal was a fraud and that only the God of Israel held true authority over the heavens. The Cloud Rider was a title reserved for the deity and deity alone. This is why Daniel 7 verse 13 is perhaps the most explosive verse in the entire Hebrew Bible. In Daniel's vision, he sees the Ancient of Days, the great and eternal God, seated on a throne of fire. But then he sees one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. As Heiser points out, this is a massive shift in the biblical narrative. For the first time, we see a second figure who is not the Ancient of Days, yet who arrives on the clouds, the very signature of Yahweh's presence. This figure is brought directly into the presence of the Ancient of Days and is given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. The word used for serve here is pilach, a term specifically reserved for the worship of a deity. Jesus was claiming to be this figure. He was claiming to be Yahweh, the visible manifestation of the invisible God, appearing in human form to take the throne of the universe. To the high priest, this wasn't just a messianic claim, it was the ultimate high treason against the oneness of God. However, many Christians today misread the direction of this cloud riding. We often assume when Jesus talks about the Son of Man coming, he is talking about a downward descent from heaven to earth, what we call the second coming. But according to N.T. Wright, in his landmark work, Jesus and the Victory of God, he argues that we have been reading the text upside down. If we return to the source material in Daniel 7, the Son of Man is not traveling towards earth, he is traveling towards God. Daniel says, he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. This is a scene of heavenly vindication. It is the story of a figure who has been suffering and persecuted on earth, being lifted up, carried by the clouds into the throne room, and installed as the rightful king. Wright emphasizes that when Jesus speaks to Caiaphas, he isn't giving a lecture on the end of the world 2,000 years in the future. He's talking about what is about to happen in the next 48 hours. He's telling his judges, from this moment on, you will see the evidence that I am being vindicated. You will see my exaltation. The coming Jesus referred to is his inauguration. It is his journey from the depths of the grave to the heights of the heavenly throne. This interpretation shifts the focus from a distant, fiery return to the immediate reality of the cross and the resurrection as the moment where Jesus is crowned as the world's true Lord. In the eyes of Jesus, the cross was not a defeat, it was the ladder to the throne, the moment the Son of Man was brought near to the Father. The High Priest Caiaphas understood this perfectly. He knew that by combining the cloud rider of Daniel 7 with the right hand of Psalm 110, Jesus was asserting a co-regency with God. Psalm 110 begins with, "The Lord said unto my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool." This was widely understood as a messianic passage, but Jesus pushed it to its breaking point by claiming he would be sitting on the right hand of the power. He was telling the Sanhedrin that their earthly court was about to be overruled by a higher one. He was claiming that he, the man standing before them in ranks, was the one who would ultimately sit in judgment over them. This creates a profound theological paradox. These claims reflect a very early and very high Christology. Jesus wasn't a humble teacher who was slowly deified by his followers over centuries. The blasphemy occurred precisely because he made these claims about himself. In the heart of Jerusalem, before the highest authorities of the land, he was identifying himself as the human embodiment of the divine council's most powerful figure. He was claiming that the space between God and man had been collapsed in his own person. When Caiaphas rent his clothes, he was following a legal prescription found in the Mishnah for when a judge hears a direct blasphemy against the name of God. To the high priest, Jesus was a man making himself God, but from the perspective of the New Testament writers, Jesus was the God-man reclaiming the glory that was rightfully his. The cloud rider had stepped out of the pages of ancient prophecy and into the courtroom of human history. The coming on the clouds was the announcement that the old order, the temple, the priesthood, and the power of Rome was being eclipsed by a new everlasting kingdom. In the end, the trial of Jesus becomes the trial of every listener. If Jesus is the cloud rider, then he is the one whom all dominion and glory belongs. He is the one who was vindicated by the Ancient of Days through the resurrection, proving that his claim to the throne was not blasphemy, but the ultimate truth. The direction of the clouds leads us not just to a future hope, but to a present reality, that the Son of Man has already been brought near to the Ancient of Days, and his kingdom is one that shall never be destroyed.